The acropolises occupied a significant position in the antique Greek city-states. These citadels were constructed in the center of the polis, at a location that could be easily defended. Apart from serving defense purposes, they were also religious centers. The citadel of Athens has a special place among the many acropolises. It is not only its size and the quality of its design and construction that raise it above similar buildings of ancient Greece, but also its historical significance. Located on a limestone rock on the Attica Plateau, the Acropolis was built in the 5th century BC, during the peaceful age of Pericles. The main designer of the religious art here was Phidias, one of the most famous Hellenistic sculptors in this area. A complex monumental gateway, the propylaea, served as an entrance to the sacred area. The grand marble gate was designed by Mnesicles. In the Roman era, a staircase was added to it, next to which stood one of the finest examples of Ionic architecture, the Temple of Athena Nike. Most of the buildings located on the rock promontory above the city were erected in honor of Athena, the goddess that protected the city named after her. The magnificent bronze statue of Athena stood in the central open-air space of the Acropolis, safeguarding the city she favored above others. The Chalcotheke, or bronze store, was the site for collecting ritual presents dedicated to the goddess. Among the buildings of the Acropolis stands one of the largest, most famous, and most significant temples of the antique world, the Parthenon. Based on designs by Phidias, Iktinos and Callicrates led the construction of this work of art that blends a Doric architectural order with Ionic elements. The larger cella of the temple housed the handiwork of the most famous Hellenistic sculptor, the 12-meter-tall sculpture of Athena. Apart from the treasured daughter of Zeus, other gods also occupied a place on the Acropolis. The Erechtheion was also one of the religious temples of the Acropolis. It became famous for its caryatids, the maiden figures that served as supporting columns. Unfortunately, only the ruins have remained from the sanctuary of Artemis, the Brauroneon. The Acropolis of Athens, which attracts hundreds of thousands of tourists every year, received its well-deserved place on the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites in 1987. The most famous leaning tower in the world stands on the Piazza del Duomo in Pisa, Italy. This special structure is the third oldest building on the square. It was originally the freestanding bell tower of the cathedral that stands next to it. The cathedral is one of the architectural gems of Tuscany. Construction began in 1063, and it was one of the first buildings designed in the Romanesque style. The most spectacular structural element of the cathedral is the main entrance with a facade made of grey marble and a gate made of bronze. The baptistry stands opposite the main entrance of the cathedral, or Duomo. The construction of this round Romanesque building began in 1152. It has a circumference of 107.24 meters and is thus the largest baptistry in Italy. The bronze sculpture of St. John the Baptist stands on top of its dome, facing the cathedral and the bell tower. But the best known and most visited building of the square, also known as Piazza del Miracoli, is the Leaning Tower. Its construction began in 1173 and took place in 3 stages. After reaching the 3rd floor, the weak subsoil and poor foundation led to the building sinking on its southeastern side. The work was interrupted several times, and the building was finally completed in 1372. During later centuries, the tower suffered a great deal of damage. A large-scale restoration project was completed in 2001, in which the structure of the tower was strengthened and the surface restored. The tower is 56.7 meters tall on its northwestern side, and it measures nearly 1 meter less on the southeastern side. It leans nearly 4 degrees, and the top of the tower is displaced horizontally by 4 meters. There are 7 bells in the tower, tuned to musical scale, the smallest one weighing 300 kilograms, and the largest one with a mass of 3,620 kilograms. Born in Pisa, the Italian scientist Galileo Galilei is said to have conducted one of his famous experiments in the Leaning Tower. The polymath, known mainly for his achievements in astronomy and physics, wanted to demonstrate that the speed of free-falling objects is not dependent on their mass, not taking air resistance into consideration. As one of his students reported, the master had dropped 2 cannonballs of different weights from the tower, and they landed in the same moment. The Hagía Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom, is located in Istanbul, Turkey. The building has an eventful history spanning over 1.5 millennia. The original church was built in the 4th century by the son of Constantine the Great, who had founded the new Roman capital there. Having been destroyed and rebuilt several times, the church took its final form in the 6th century. Later, in the 13th century, the Crusaders temporarily converted this great Eastern Orthodox Church into a Roman Catholic one. When Constantinople was conquered by the Turks in 1453, Sultan Mehmed II ordered that the building should be changed into a mosque. The 4 minarets were added in the second half of the 16th century. The building functioned as one of the principal mosques of Islam until 1931, when it was closed. After the reforms in the Republic of Turkey, it was reopened as a museum in 1934. This Byzantine-style Orthodox basilica is an architectural masterpiece, and it is often cited as a perfect synthesis of Byzantine architectural elements. The most special feature of the building is the complex dome structure. It was an architectural achievement due to the dimensions of the main dome, 56 meters in height and 31 meters in diameter, and its support system. There are 40 arched windows placed around the base of the dome, which gives the dome the appearance of hovering above the nave. On the western and eastern sides, the arches continue in semi-domes supported by smaller semi-domed exedras. Thus, the impressive size of the building's interior is further expanded. The nave is surrounded by 2 ambulatories, with an arched colonnade on the ground floor and a colonnaded upper gallery. The contrast of the interior and the exterior of the building resulted from precise planning. The interior of the simple, massive building was airy and richly decorated. This great structure, the last architectural achievement of late antiquity and first masterpiece of Byzantine architecture, together with other structures of the historical part of Istanbul, was included in the list of UNESCO World Heritage Cultural Sites in 1985.
команду вам транслировать команды. Прием. Доброго полета, все нормально.
During the Cold War, the Soviet Union and the US, the two superpowers, were in competition in almost all fields of endeavor. Space technology played an especially important role in this competition. What American leaders had feared finally happened in 1961. The Soviets sent the first man into outer space. This great task was assigned to Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin, a 27-year-old fighter pilot. Gagarin started his journey from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in present-day Kazakhstan aboard the Vostok 1 on the 12th of April, 1961. A few minutes later, he became the first cosmonaut, the first human to leave the Earth's atmosphere. His mission was a first in many respects. The first radio conversation from outer space, the first experience of zero gravity, etc. According to records, the flight took 108 minutes. In this time, Gagarin's spacecraft completed one orbit around the Earth. He was greeted by Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev after landing, and news of his journey spread all over the world. A few years later, Gagarin died in a plane crash, with many details of the circumstances still unexplained. But his name and the chronicle of his journey have been recorded in the history books. Tower cranes are machines used for lifting and transporting loads weighing up to several tons. Most tower cranes have a maximum radius of 70 to 80 meters. The counter jib is on the opposite side of the mast from the jib. It holds the engine and the counterweights. Counterweights are necessary because the load lifted by the jib exerts a torque, which, without an appropriate counterweight, would damage the structure of the crane. The trolley, responsible for lifting and moving the load, runs along the jib. When a tower crane is set up, the first parts are assembled with the help of another crane. Then, the crane builds itself, as shown in the animation. Such cranes are called self-erecting cranes. The product of the length of the lever arm and the load weight is the torque. If this exceeds a certain limit, the structure of the crane may be damaged, the jib may break, or the crane may tilt. Thus, the heavier the load, the smaller the radius.